Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, October 16th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian Feast and Marian Meditations. Well, today we've got a number of different celebrations. First off, a historical reference. It was today, back in 2002, that Pope St. John Paul II issued the apostolic letter Rosarium Virginis Mariae. This is obviously concerns the Most Holy Rosary and presents it as a compendium of the gospel message. Again, that was back in 2002. Likewise, the Abbot Orsini tells us that today they celebrate the Madonna del Milan, probably Milano, Our Lady of Milan, which was dedicated by Pope Martin V way back in 1417. That's what he tells us. Again, this church was built in 1388 by John Galeas, the Duke of Milan, we're told. We're also mentioned that this is Our Lady of Purity, which is an important devotion of the Theatine Fathers. Then we go further south. I was trying to think which one I wanted to take here. Further south, the foundation of the Militia Immacolata that took place in Rome, Italy today, back in 1917, and that was done by St. Maximilian Kolbe. This is the group he founded, particularly for the evangelization of the world by means of our Blessed Mother. And last but not least, they also celebrate Santa María de la Pampa in Santa Rosa la Pampa in Argentina. It's a fairly recent devotion. In 1986, the Bishop of Santa Rosa and the Discalced Carmelite Sisters began planning to establish a convent in Santa Rosa, which is an agricultural hub in the Argentine plains and the capital of the province of La Pampa. They decided to call the new community Santa María de la Pampa, and the sisters designed and commissioned an image of the Virgin holding the child in a native poncho. We're told that the ceramic image arrived in 1989, which is even before the nuns did. On March 19th, 1994, the monastery was finally inaugurated. The new image of Mary spread throughout the region and even found a place in the lobby of the provincial legislature in 1995. On October 16th, that was today, in 1998, a copy was installed in the narthex of the Santa Rosa Cathedral, right, between the papal and provincial flags in the presence of the governor and other officials, right? Ever since, October 16th has been the special day of Santa María de la Pampa. I think by that they mean like when they celebrate her devotion. Since 2002, a procession from the cathedral to the monastery takes place on the Saturday that follows, right? Followed by Mass at the chapel convent. At the convent chapel, rather. And so that is what we are celebrating today in the Marian world on October 16th. For today's reading from True Devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we are continuing once again with this first section, which discusses devotion to Our Lady in general. In the first part, I guess we said. Second section, discernment of true devotion to Our Blessed Lady. And now we're in this section where he's considering the characteristics of true devotion to Our Blessed Lady. Now, if you recall, we said he gave 5 characteristics. Devotion to Our Lady should be interior, tender, holy, constant, and disinterested, right? And so now we'll hear what he says as a sort of conclusion to this, and this actually concludes the first part. At point 111, he says, I have now said many things about the Most Holy Virgin, but I have many more to say, and there are infinitely more which I shall omit, whether from ignorance, inability, or want of time, in the design which I have to form a true client of Mary, and a true disciple of Jesus Christ. Right? So he says we can say much, much more, right? It was the phrase of Louis de Montfort of Mary, you can never say enough. Point 112. Oh, but my labor will have been well expended if this little writing, falling into the hands of a soul of good dispositions, a soul well born, born of God and of Mary, and not of blood, nor of the will, or of the flesh, nor of the will of man, should unfold to him, and should, by the grace of the Holy Ghost, inspire him with the excellence and the price of that true and solid devotion to Our Blessed Lady, which I am going presently to describe. If I knew that my guilty blood could serve in engraving upon anyone's heart the truths which I am writing in honor of my true mother and sovereign mistress, I would use my blood instead of ink to form the letters, in the hope to find some good souls who, by their fidelity to the practice which I shall teach, shall compensate to my dear mother and mistress for the losses which she has suffered through my ingratitude and infidelities. Okay, that's kind of intense. So he says, like, if writing this in blood would, serve to, make people believe this all the more, I'd write it in blood. Okay. But luckily he realized that that's probably not going to be as effective. You can just write it in ink, St. Louis. That's enough for us. At one point, somebody asked on this podcast about using the term mistress for Mary, because today it has sort of a pejorative meaning. And so, interestingly enough, if you look up the word mistress in see the meaning of the word, it's true that that is you might think like, oh boy, what does that mean? So here, actually, if you look, this is Oxford Dictionary. It says, first, a woman in a position of authority or control, right? And the second one is the woman, or anyone who's other than a man's wife, in some sort of relationship with a married man, right? But when we talk about Mary as our mistress, we mean in the first sense, like she is in a position of authority with respect to us, which is wonderful because she's an authority, she can help us. So we'll read 1:13. I feel myself more than ever animated to believe and to hope all which I have had deeply engraven upon my heart, and have asked of God these many years, namely, that sooner or later the Blessed Virgin shall have more children, servants, and slaves of love than ever, and that by means of this, Jesus Christ, my dear Master, shall reign more in hearts than ever. And then 1:14, this is the last point before continuing to part 2. I clearly foresee that raging beasts shall come in fury to tear with their diabolical teeth this little writing, and him whom the Holy Ghost has made use of to write it, or at least to smother it in the silence of a coffer, that it may not appear. They shall even attack and persecute those who shall read it, and carry it out in practice. But what matter? On the contrary, so much the better. This very foresight encourages me, and makes me hope for a great success. That is to say, for a great squadron of brave and valiant soldiers of Jesus and Mary, of both sexes, to combat the world, the devil, and corrupted nature, in those more than ever perilous times which are about to come. Qui legit intelligat, qui potest capire capiat, means who can read this, may they understand, and who can ever understand, who can understand it, may they understand, which is, I think, if I am not mistaken, a citation from the book of Revelation. Now, that's interesting, that phrase, he says, they're going to, stuck it in a chest, right, and it'll be lost, which is true. Like we said, it's very funny because the work was lost for a time, and I'm trying to find exactly where this is, but we discussed it at the beginning of our podcast here, our recordings for this. It says that, St. Louis de Montfort wrote the treatise on true devotion to the Blessed Virgin at the beginning of the 1700s, but the manuscript was practically unknown for more than a century, right? When almost by chance it was at last discovered in 1842 and published in 1843, it was an instant success, right? And they just found it because they had put together all of the books, and as they were going through the archives, they found this one, and they said, wait, that's Louis de Montfort's writing, right? So it's very prophetic. He says that people will attack this. The devil doesn't want this book to be published, but it doesn't matter, right? Because eventually it will come out, and it will do great good. The world will try to destroy, it says, this work. It will try to destroy him who wrote it, he said, but it doesn't matter. So with that, then, we're able to start tomorrow with part 2, which is about on the most excellent devotion to our Blessed Lady, or the perfect consecration to Jesus by Mary.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our Marian podcast. As St. John Paul II teaches us, from Mary we learn to love Christ, her Son, the Son of God. Through her intercession, may we grow ever closer to Him. We encourage you to share this with a loved one or friend and help spread our devotion to Mary. Thank you, and God bless.